Hello again. This is Michelle Scaife, the Extension Agent with Better Living for Texans here in Montgomery County, part of Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service. Better Living for Texans is fully funded by the USDA and Health and Human Services, an equal opportunity provider. Welcome to the kitchen. Today we're going to talk a little bit about protein. So when we look at the U.S. Dietary Guidelines, they have given us MyPlate, as you see here. MyPlate is our healthy meal pattern. It's the image, the icon that we use to help us to make decisions about what nutrient-dense, healthy foods to put on our plates when we're planning for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and even snacks. On MyPlate, you'll notice that little purple wedge, that little purple section over here, that's our protein icon. Protein is important, and they recommend that in the totality of a day, we get about 6 ounces of lean, low-fat or no-fat protein. And that can be in many forms. So protein can come from cooked beans or legumes, nuts and seeds, beef, chicken, fish, eggs, and even dairy products. Now, when we think about those things, why do we need all that protein in our day? Protein is extremely important in aiding our bodies in growth, development, and cellular repair. So they help us not only with tissue, but with muscle. And we all would like to have a good set of muscles to keep our body moving and functioning and playing and doing all of the things that we like to do in a day. So that protein-rich foods, they're going to give us things like iron, magnesium, vitamin E, vitamin B, and zinc. All the things that we need to really get us moving, healthy, support our immune system, and keep us going. So let's look at some things that we could be doing. Of course, you can eat, like we said, beef, chicken, pork, fish, eggs. Those are some of our really, obvious protein choices. But if we're going to take that protein throughout the day, it might be in the form of almond butter, peanut butter, cashew butter, or soy butter, the wow butter that we talked about last week, on a whole grain piece of toast. That would be a great way for breakfast or snack to get some nice healthy protein in our day. We could have it in the form of the actual nuts, so peanuts, almonds, cashews, pistachios, whatever you want. Remember that a serving size is about 15 nuts, or what fits in our hand. We can have some non-fat, low-fat, or skim milk, or some Greek yogurt. Non-fat, low-fat yogurts are excellent sources of protein as well. We could even have some milk with cereal, which is usually fortified in some of those vitamins as well. But today, I have a very unusual recipe that will give you a great source of protein without a lot of extra calories. And believe it or not, it involves chocolate. Who in the world have ever thought of chocolate and protein together in the same recipe? Believe me, when I first got started, the first time I tried this, I couldn't believe how good it was, and I would have never guessed what the ingredients were. So are you ready? Let's take this on. So I've made sure that my hands, my surface, my items are all clean. We're ready to go. So I've got my recipe. Remember, our recipe is going to give us everything that we need. It's going to tell us what we need and what we're going to do with the things once we get them out. We're going to have all of our information. So let's look at what we have. The first ingredient in our very unique high protein recipe today is garbanzo beans. They're also called chickpeas. So they often come in a can like this. You can buy them dried in the dry bean section. If you dry them dried, we're going to want them cooked before we start this recipe. So they do cook in about 20 minutes in boiling water. Similar to cooking other dried beans, they're just a little bit faster to get done. So we have here, we're today just using canned ones because it's what we have in our pantry and what we have on the shelves, and it makes things a little bit faster for us. So I've opened a can of beans, and remember, when you go to use a can, you want to wash the top off before you open it to prevent any foodborne illnesses from getting from here into the food that we're eating. So I have opened those beans, I drained the liquid out of it, and I have given them a little bit of a rinse. The reason that we rinse them is not just to get that solution off of them that they're soaking in, that kind of aquafaba, that bean water, but it also will help us to rinse off any additional sodium. Canned beans and canned items can often be a little bit high in sodium. So if we take the time, once we drain them off, to go ahead and rinse them again, we're rinsing off even more of the potential sodium that's in those beans. So I've got my beans. We're also going to use some maple syrup. You could use honey or agave if that's what you have, but we're using maple syrup because I like to keep that in the refrigerator. You know, it's good for those Saturday morning pancakes. So we have beans, maple syrup. We're going to add a pinch of salt to our recipe today. It kind of brings out the sweetness that we're going to have with that maple syrup. And we're going to use some cocoa powder. Now when I say cocoa powder, I mean cocoa powder like this. This is an unsweetened, just everyday old cocoa powder. This is sometimes called baking cocoa powder because there's nothing added to it. There's no sugar, there's no milk. This isn't cocoa like you would drink hot cocoa with. This is cocoa powder. So we have that today. And we have a little bit of water. And that little bit of water is going to help us get that really smooth, beautiful consistency that we're looking for. We also have some olive oil. Again, another thing that makes this really smooth. If you haven't guessed already, we're making something called chocolate hummus. I know, it sounds weird, but work with me here. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our blender. You can use any brand, any type of blender. I have a lot of different blenders that I've used over the years and in my cooking classes in person, and trust me, every blender works. You don't have to have a special blender to do this. You can make this chocolate hummus by hand. You just want to be really careful to really mash things up to a really smooth consistency. So it's a little bit of work, but it can be done. So today I'm using a blender because that's what I have, right? And I want things to be quick and easy and get this snack going. So I have my blender. This is called the pitcher. Before you start, very important to make sure the blades are in place. You'll notice mine are down in here. Once we have the blades in here, we want to be really careful not to stick our hands down in the pitcher because those blades are extremely sharp and we could cut ourselves. So once the blades are in, be really careful about where your hands are at all times. So I've got my blender down here in front of me. Let's put it up here so you can see what I'm doing, right? Let's see what's going on. All right, so I've got the blender ready to go, blades in place. To this, we're going to put 1 can. This is a 15-ounce can of our drained and rinsed chickpeas or garbanzo beans. They're known by both names and either one is fine. So I got those in there. If we were using cooked beans, we would want 1.5 cups. Okay? All right. To that, we are going to go ahead and add the cocoa powder. So cocoa powder, sometimes when you look in here, it's going to be a little chunky. Sometimes it gets dried little balls. You know, it just happens. They kind of dry up. So I like to take mine and just kind of tap around a little bit, soften it up so it's not compacted. And then what we're going to do is we're going to scoop and then we're going to flatten it off. So what I've got is a knife and I'm just going to swipe across like this and make sure that I have a level spoonful. And to this recipe, we're going to use 4 of these level spoonfuls of unsweetened cocoa. All right, so that's 1. Make sure you don't lose count. Nobody wants to try and guess how many. 2, 3, and 1 more. Got all that in there? All right, move that out of the way. Now we're going to put in some of that maple syrup. And remember, this is our sweet. So far we have garbanzo beans. Not really flavorful. They don't have a lot of taste to them. We've got some cocoa powder, but it's not sweetened, right? So we need to put some sweetener in there. And like I said, I'm using some maple syrup, but you could use honey or another sweetener if you want. You can also use a liquid no-calorie sweetener. It does turn out beautifully. So we've tried it. All right, we're going to do again 4 spoonfuls. So I'm measuring over something. You could measure over an empty bowl if you'd like. or you can measure over what you're doing, but measure carefully because we don't want to overdo it. Just get to the top of that spoon and dump it in. So that's 1, don't lose count, 2, 3, and last one, 4. All right, we're gonna get that nice, let it all out, right? Nobody wants to lose any of that delicious sweetness. Now we're not putting too much sweetness in there, right? Did you notice this? See this back here? This is what I like to call my thank you for coming bowl. So when I'm cooking, in order to try to keep the countertops and the work surfaces clean, I like to kind of put utensils or measuring cups or measuring spoons that I've already used that might be dirty or sticky, like from measuring syrup. I put those in a bowl in the back, and that way I just have to carry this to the sink when I'm ready to wash dishes, and I don't have a lot of sticky spots all over the counter. You don't have to do it, that's just something that I like to do. All right, next thing we're gonna use is salt. We only want a little tiny 1/4 of a teaspoon. Well, we're using a tablespoon a minute ago. This is the teaspoon, little bitty. And again, nice level spoonful into the bowl. All right, moving on. We've got to put our water in. All right, we want 4 tablespoons of water. So again, big tablespoon, measuring carefully, trying not to overfill. 1, 2, 3, 4. Last thing we need is oil. And again, that oil is going to give us a little bit of healthy fats to help to make this smooth, silky, and delicious. Because what we're going to do with this chocolate hummus is use it for a dip. We just need 1 spoonful of this. Again, measure carefully, straight to the top, and in we go. All right. Before we blend, we're going to just kind of look and make sure that we have used everything we needed. So I've got salt, syrup, cocoa powder. We have the beans, water, and oil. Looks like we have everything we need. Now we want to put our lid on securely. This one has arrows that line up to help me know that I have the lid on correctly. So get it in place. And now we're going to blend. The goal here is to see it get going and get moving, see the blades moving, and kind of see those little round chickpeas start disappearing into this silky, smooth, chocolatey goodness. So let's try it. Here we go. Gotta be a little loud. So you see how it's moving, working, going. Make sure those blades fully stop turning before you take it off and give it a look. Sometimes when we're blending items, they're going to remain chunky, or they may be up here at the top, isn't blended in with what's in the bottom. And all we have to do is open it. And then we want to use a spatula. Remember, we don't want our fingers down in here. A rubber spatula is really nice because it will work its way around the sides without disrupting the blades or damaging your utensil. So, looky here. So you can see we have a few bits of cocoa powder and a few bits of those garbanzo beans that really didn't blend all the way up. So what we're going to do is called scraping it down, just like it sounds. We're going to use that to push those unblended pieces down at the bottom where the blades can reach it and where it's down with all the other good stuff. So scrape it all the way down, all the way around. Take it out. Don't lick it. I know it's tempting, but don't do that because then we're introducing cross-contamination, right? We will be getting our spoon dirty and putting, don't do that. Set it aside for now. Let's run this through again. Before we put it on, get that lid. We want to make sure that we're practicing safety. If you've ever accidentally turned on a blender without the lid on it, it's an experience you'll never forget because it makes a complete mess. Don't do it. So lid on, latched in place correctly, and let's blend this one more time. I know it's going to be a little loud, but bear with me. Ready? Here we go. There we go. Now it's starting to sound good. Again, wait for those blades to stop, to fully stop, before you remove the pitcher or open the top or anything like that. So let's check and see how it did. We're going to take that lid off and give it a look. It looks lovely. Ready? Look in there. Can you see it? I know it's kind of dark, but we have this beautiful chocolatey, creamy dip down in the base of this blender. So one thing we want to do is, again, like I said, those blades are extremely sharp. So we want to be careful when we are removing this. Very tip top. The blades are down here in the bottom, so I'm going to grab it by the top, just like this. I'm going to use that spatula again and kind of scoop it off, because I don't want any of this left behind. This is a high protein, creamy, chocolatey, delicious snack that's only 70 calories per serving. That's not bad, right? All right, we're gonna put this in the bowl. Thank you for coming bowl. Out of the way, we know it will get washed later. And then I'm gonna get something to eat from. We're going to use that lovely rubber spatula to scrape all of this delicious chocolate creamy goodness into a bowl. Now, once we make this dip will last in the refrigerator for 3-4 days. If you have it in a nice container with a lid, 3 or 4 days, but I don't think it's gonna last that long. I think you and your family are gonna really enjoy this. Well, now we have this chocolate hummus. What on earth are we gonna do with it? We need something to dip it with, right? Everybody has different flavors and different taste combinations that they love. So I have tried it with graham crackers, with baked pretzels, and with apple slices. And I have to say, apple slices are kind of my favorite. If you are slicing apples and you notice, apples tend to oxidize, right? They turn brown once you cut them. To prevent the apple slices from browning, you can put a teaspoon of water, a teaspoon of lemon juice in a cup of water, and drop your apple slices in there. Kind of swoosh them around a little bit, make sure that all the surfaces get that on there. Take them out, give them a little shake, and then they're ready to go. And they'll last for a few days in the refrigerator without much browning. That's always nice, right? Have them cut and ready to go. Now, for me, this is a wonderful pairing. You've got kind of a sweet, tart apple, nice and crisp and crunchy, and you're gonna pair that with this creamy, sweet dip, right? Like I said, I like mine with apples, but it tastes great with pretzels or graham crackers or any other cracker of choice. It's also really good on a piece of whole grain toast or wrapped up in a tortilla, believe it or not. So, just because I know you probably don't think I really like it, I really do. I know that you're probably thinking, I have to be kidding. Beans and chocolate. But I'm telling you, let it be an adventure. Let it be a science experiment. Stir it up and see what happens. You never know. This might become your next favorite thing.